I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome to another episode of Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we're breaking down the House's proposed budget and how lawmakers want to pay for education, a new Browns stadium, and property tax relief. We'll also discuss a new plan to limit teens' smartphone use and how Ohio Democrats are navigating Trump's second term. With me today for one of the last times is Erin Glenn.
Hi, happy to be here.
For those who aren't following Erin's every move on social media, she will be heading back to the Cincinnati Enquirer to cover Hamilton County politics, which will offer no shortage of interesting stories, I'm sure.
Yep, definitely following the stadium tax situation.
Yes. And speaking of, let's dig into the budget. The House unveiled its spending plan for the next 2 years this week. As a reminder, Governor Mike DeWine, the House and Senate all have their version of the budget, and they'll come together at the end to hash out differences. Two of the biggest things in there are schools and property taxes. House Republicans want to scrap the current school funding formula, though they'd give schools a little more money for the next 2 years. And they also want to lean on schools to lower people's property taxes. How is that going to work?
Yeah, so as far as property taxes, they want to require counties to lower their property taxes if their school districts have balance of more than 25% of their budget are carrying that kind of balance into the next year.
Yeah, and this comes after, lawmakers have been really grappling with this property tax issue. It's been a couple of years since home valuations skyrocketed and really hurt a lot of homeowners in Ohio, and lawmakers still haven't really come up with a solution. I think what's most interesting to me about this is that amid all of this property tax talk, this is the first I've heard of an idea like this.
Yeah, I think Ohio Republicans have said before they cite the school district's cash reserves, and school districts are kind of quick to say like that money, it's not exactly what it appears in terms of money that they can use year over year. And some of it is tied up in transportation costs. And, even with declining enrollment, schools have pretty similar infrastructure costs when it comes to buildings, hiring teachers, things like that.
Yeah. And I was talking to someone earlier today about this, and, I think cash reserves among school districts are higher than normal right now, but that's partially because schools got a ton of federal money the past few years because of COVID relief and things like that. So they were naturally spending more of the federal money and saving some of these state funds for, a time like now.
Right. It's not money that's going to keep coming to them.
Right. And the House budget, as you hinted to earlier, would provide $600 million in bonds to help pay for a new Browns stadium and Brook Park, which a lot of people are not psyched about. It would change how marijuana tax revenue would be spent. Local governments would get 20% of that money for 5 years, and the rest would go into the state general fund to spend it how they want. Going back to the stadium thing for a second, I think one of the sticking points of this is going to be, okay, this is how we pay for this Browns project, but what do we do when the Bengals or the Blue Jackets in Columbus want to make upgrades to their stadiums?
Right. And we saw from the governor's proposed budget that he does not want to use taxpayer money for things like that. He would rather raise the sports betting tax and use that for both stadium upgrades and youth sports initiatives. I think the Brown situation is interesting because it's controversial, both in terms of just the stadium moving the stadium out into the suburbs, and then also controversial in terms of how they would pay for it.
Right. And one thing I'm going to be watching as part of this is what the local government does, because the Haslams who own the Browns have asked for local public money in addition to state funding, and the locals are not as eager to hand out money as the legislature seems to be. So, I don't know what that means for the project if they don't get quite all the money that they want. And it's not a budget without some controversial ideas, kind of unrelated issues to spending being tucked into it. What are some of the things that House Republicans added to it dealing with LGBTQ issues and things like that?
Yeah, there were a lot. that you reported on, including a new definition of gender identity as something that does not provide a meaningful basis for identification. There's a provision that would require public libraries to put any books or other materials related to gender identity or orientation in the adult sections. There's a provision to ban state agencies from displaying any flags except for the Ohio flag or the U.S. flag, so not any of the pride flags that we might be used to seeing around.
Yeah, we'll see if any of those end up in the final version. You know, as I said earlier, we still have a long ways to go. The House is going to vote on their plan next week, and then it's off to the Senate. Our next topic is Ohio Democrats and Congress. I did a story this week that kind of came out of curiosity over how Democrats are handling Trump's second term. Liberal voters are really frustrated right now. They're calling on the party to make some serious changes and fight harder against the White House. We're definitely seeing them push back against Trump's policies and Elon Musk's spending cuts, but it's kind of hard to be a Democrat in Ohio, especially in some of our swing districts.
Yeah, lawmakers like Marcy Kaptur and Amelia Sykes won pretty narrowly in the last election, and they're facing another election soon. So they're kind of in a tougher spot when it comes to speaking out against Trump policies.
Yeah, Trump won Kaptur's district, and Trump and Harris were basically tied in Sykes's district, which is around the Akron area. So they really have a different constituency to deal with than someone like Joyce Beatty or Shontel Brown. You know, they're in the Cleveland, Columbus areas. Those are reliably blue, and I think they probably have more freedom to push back a little harder against some of what the White House is doing right now. Let's end today with a proposal to give parents more control over their kids' TikTok account. Under a plan from House Republicans, parents of kids under 16 could approve or reject an app before they download it. Ohio has tried something similar before, but it didn't exactly work out.
Yeah, you might remember 2 years ago when the federal court blocked Ohio's requirement to have parental notification. So kids would have to get permission if they're under 16 from their parents to create accounts on social media sites. The federal court blocked it. Social media companies argued that it went against First Amendment protections.
Yeah, the sponsors of this plan say that they're on better legal footing this time, that, you know, doing this just like yes or no when kids download an app is going to avoid some of the legal trouble that they faced before, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and you can see where they're coming from. I mean, there has been evidence that heavy use of social media for teenagers can negatively affect their mental health.
Right. Yeah, I think we've seen more and more, whether it's this legislation or efforts by Governor Mike DeWine, now Senator John Husted, you know, they're really concerned about how smartphones are affecting kids. There's a renewed debate again in the budget about whether to keep phones away from kids during the school day. Ohio's tried to do that before. We did like a modified version of that that's in place now. So I think you're going to continue to see this talked about more.